What's up, and welcome to Surging Ahead. This is Brett, and today we are going to talk about the FSD beta button and the safety scores that come along with it. I know I have had my difficulties with it, but I figured out how to get my score up there and to be sitting at a 100. And in this video, I'm going to kind of walk through what I did to get back to a 100 in hopes that maybe it can help you. So stick around and we'll dig right in. Okay, so like I'm sure many of you on this video, when that update finally hit my car for the button, I immediately installed it. So I got up way earlier Saturday morning than I would normally because I was just so excited about that beta. Installed it. As soon as it was actually installed, ran out to my car, pressed the button, and then I was excited to see what my safety score would be. At this point, Elon hadn't said, hey, we're only going to take the safest drivers from it. It was just, if you're a good driver, you'll get the beta. If you're not, you won't. That was his initial plan. And so, I still wondered how it would work, but it sounded fine to me. So we were actually going to take the kids out to the pumpkin patch that day, which is about a 50-mile drive. And I was like, okay, well, I got this safety score, so let's go out and see what happens. So I go for that drive. And after I got home and my results updated, I was a little bit unhappy with my score. So we'll bring it up. This is what came up. And overall, I thought fine. The hard braking happened because I didn't trust autopilot to slow down for a stoplight. And it wasn't. So I took over and stopped for what was a yellow. And I will never do that again because of the impact it has on the score. And I understood where that came from, but the unsafe following really bugged me because I was on autopilot almost the entire drive, and I really didn't understand how all the metrics worked at this point. But it bugged me that on autopilot, which was supposed to be good, it pinged me for a 36.4% unsafe following. Well, later, when I learned how the numbers worked, I came to understand that that probably happened when I got onto the interstate and was going above 50 miles per hour as I was merging over before I activated autopilot. In that brief period of time, I ended up racking up a score of unsafe follow distance, and then the worst thing I could do was continue to drive the rest of the day and put on a ton of miles on that, which then weighted my score pretty heavily. So this 98 from the first day driving was almost 100 miles. Now, while I was annoyed, at this point in time, I didn't realize that I had to have a 100 to get early access to the beta. I thought a 98 was, well, maybe actually technically would be accurate on where I was on a driver. I was just a little frustrated on how it came in because I was trying extra hard to be a super safe driver at that point. Anyway, a couple days later, when Elon came out and said, well, you had to be 100, I soon realized my mistake. I had racked up another drive that next day, doing a pretty long distance where I had autopilot disengage on me on a sharp corner on the interstate, and I ended up having to turn it, and it came in as a 99. So I ended up with, at that point in time, almost 200 miles with an average score of a 98. Well, there were some people on Reddit that went through and said in order to get not Reddit, on the Tesla Motors Discord, that said in order to get the score, what Tesla was actually doing was taking your daily scores by the amount of miles you've driven and just doing an average of scores, daily score per mile. And so it came out from this that I then had to drive about 240 miles at a score of 100 to get my score to be a 100. And this was my ultimate goal. Now, what I learned and what really made sense for me to get it there was if I take short drives in the day on residential roads, and I take those short drives, maybe like 8 miles or whatever, and they come in with a 100, I then take that base score, and if it's a 100, I go out to the interstate, I set autopilot, and go on a long, uneventful drive, oftentimes even disabling NOA except for when I get on and off of exits because I don't want NOA to put me in a situation where I have to disengage or whatever. So just running straight up autopilot on long stretches of interstate to really pad out that mileage. So I put in a base score of 100, and then that day I go for a long drive, 100 miles or whatever, just straight easy drives on a kind of barren patch of interstate. And this works because I live in the Midwest, right? I don't know that this would work so well if you live in an area that's heavily populated with traffic jams and whatever else on this. Road construction even gives me issues here. But I found a patch that gave me about a 40-mile stretch where there was nothing, and I would just drive that a couple of times to rack up my miles. So overall, what I found was if you lay down that base score and then you go for long drives on it, you can very quickly bring your score up. And I went from my 98 to a 100. It took me several days to do this, but now I'm sitting at a 100 safety score, and hopefully that puts me towards the front of the line for getting the FSD beta. Now, I put in almost 500 miles to do this, and I don't ordinarily drive anywhere near that much anymore since I work from home in a given week. Anyway, I typically don't drive anywhere near that much, so to get that many miles, I really had to work for it. And if you want to improve your score, you may have to also. But it can be done by doing that base number and then a longer drive. What I've also found is doing that base number to get your scores there. You want to make sure if you do that, that you then don't immediately go for a longer drive if you have a worse score there. So the other day I was driving through a parking lot, and another driver decided that they should go through a couple of spots and not pause before they come out and just run right in the middle of the street, which forced me to hit the brakes. Now, I would not call my braking aggressive. I was probably only going 5 miles per hour, and I just stopped pretty quickly from there. But it was enough to trip up my safety score instead of 95. I then had to go on a drive with my kids again that day to take them somewhere. And I ended up putting about 40 miles on top of that 95, and it had come down to like come up to like a 96, but I then had so much work to do that day. If I had left that score there, it would have added 200 miles to my overall total. So for that daily score, I had to drive around town, I think for about 3 hours, just in residential, not too busy areas where it was just straight, so I didn't have to worry about aggressive turning or aggressive braking, and just slowly letting my brakes take over, and I got that number back up. But that was a hard day. It took a lot of work to get that up, and it was not any fun. And maybe it's not worth it. I mean, we'll see here if we even get the beta to drop to people with 100s, or how long it takes to go to that 99, because I'd already been at a 99 at that point in time. It would have been perfectly fine to sit there. I just wanted to make sure I could get it as early as possible, so I really worked for that 100. And if you want to do the same thing, that's my advice to you. Make sure you have that 100 in a given day, and then put on a long drive to make sure it weights heavily against your other score. And if you do that for several days, you should be able to overcome lower scores. Now, if you have an extremely low score and it's heavily weighted, you may not be able to do this. It may be too late for you, and I'm sorry. But even if you can't get it to a 100, you can theoretically vastly improve your safety scores just by trying those things. At least it works for me here where I'm at, in a relatively small city, about 500,000 people, and big, wide open interstates outside of that. So anyway, that's what worked for me. Hopefully this can help you find out how to get your scores better. Let me know if you've seen anything different, or if you have any feedback on the overall scores and what you'd like to see them change. Obviously, I personally don't think this is the best way to measure safety driving. I find that in many instances, I'm probably more unsafe than I would be ordinarily, because I'm so cautious and so afraid of tripping up the safety score for slightly too hard of a turn or for stopping. I will run yellow lights that I would not run otherwise just to get that score up there. And there's just a bunch of behaviors that I think this encourages that are not necessarily great for how you would ordinarily drive a car. At least not in a world where most cars are driven by humans. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Hopefully, what I've done gets me the beta quicker, and hopefully, me talking about my experiences here might help you get the beta quicker as well. So, anyway, this has been Brett with Surging Ahead. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.